Good evening and welcome. Welcome to this wake service for Maureen Smith, our friend, our sister, our co-member. Welcome to, and most especially, to Maureen's family, to her children, Annie and Katie, their families, and her very large extended family, who are with us tonight by Zoom and gathered in person in New York. And welcome Loretto community around the campus here at the Mother House and around the country by Zoom. Let us begin, as we always begin, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Oh God, we rejoice that Maureen is with you, though her joyful presence will be greatly missed. She served you well with her strong focus on peace and justice. We will remember her as one who embodied the phrase from I Am the Way. We work for justice and act for peace because the gospel urges us. In the name of Jesus, we ask your blessing on Maureen, on her family, and on all of us. Amen. And now we will have Maureen's biography by Eleanor Craig.
The program says that this is by me, but it isn't. This is entirely Maureen's autobiography written 2 years ago. I wore this shirt so that you would remember she was very fond of this particular design. And you can imagine her standing here telling you her own life story. I was born and lived until moving to the Loretto Mother House in my family home in Schenectady, New York. On my 87th birthday, my niece gave me my dad's diary, which was stored in a box with other family treasures since the death of my sister Sandra. On the date of Sunday, July the 19th, 1931, I found these words in my dad's handwriting. Maureen Ellen came this morning at home, 937 State Street, 6 pounds, 10 ounces. Interrupted Daddy's breakfast, made everybody hustle. I presume this meant hustle to get to Sunday Mass. My childhood was wonderful with Mama, Anne Marie Kehoe Smith, Daddy, James Edison Smith, Aunt May, that was May Kate Glaster, Anna Marie, Patty, Sandra, Jimmy, and much later, my wonderful adopted sister, Vivian Destine. There follows a flurry of delightful memories. Crawling into the car, 3 adults and at least 1 child in the front seat, 3 adults and maybe 2 or 3 kids in the back seat, singing the whole time with the wind and Grandpa's chewing tobacco blowing in our faces and snarling our hair. Dinner every night promptly at 5:30, and then radio time in the living room while Mama and Aunt May darned our socks till they were all darn and no sock. Running across the street to Graham and Gramps' house to catch my dad's younger sisters maybe kissing a boyfriend. Wonderful summers spent at Sacandaga Park on the great Sacandaga Lake in the Adirondacks. Great friendships for 12 years at St. Columbus School, taught by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. Walking the 6 blocks all winter on top of gigantic hills of shoveled snow. Stopping by Grandpa Smith's liquor store every Monday morning for our 5-cent allowance. And then on to Dumgan's corner store and spending half an hour in front of the trays of penny candy, carefully choosing until the bag of candy was full. God bless Mr. Dumgan for his patience. In September of 1949, I headed off for a real adventure to the West. Mama drove me from Schenectady to Denver, Colorado, and Loretto Heights College. Fun years, great friends, and magnificent, lovely women who, for the most part, were remarkable teachers. Sister Marie Clyde giving me a lifelong love of ancient Greek architecture and philosophy, and the artists of the Renaissance and the great Impressionist period. Thriving on the stories and lessons of history as Mary Mangan made it come alive in all its glory and pathos, suffering and heroism. Nourishing my already love of reading and poetry in the classes of Sister Jean Carmel and Sister Mary Louise, and learning about deep thinking as I struggled through the unbelievably enriching philosophy classes of Sister Cecile, the fun biology class of Sister John Dark, and listening spellbound to the words of wisdom flowing to us from Sister Mary Florence. How could I not be attracted to the Loretto women and their dedication, even long before Vatican II, their dedication to making this world a far better, more lively and caring place. And so it was that on September the 7th, 1953, I boarded the train with family members all laughing and crying outside the window as the train pulled away and landed the next day in the little town of Loretto, Kentucky. There, I joined the community of the Sisters of Loretto, where I have embraced their mission of working for peace and acting for justice 65 years as of the day of this writing, which was almost exactly 2 years ago. I was missioned to Arlington, Virginia, where I taught 3rd grade for 3 years. What a perfect spot, a beautiful community, great spirited children, loving parents, a generous and caring pastor. I must mention my first mentor as a teacher, and she mentored me par excellence, Sister Angeles Karen, who taught 1st grade right across the hall from me. And somehow, in the 3 years I was there, turning me from an insecure, what do I do now teacher, into the beginnings of a fine teacher and mentor. Yes, I had a reputation for being a fine teacher all my life. I cherished the growth opportunities offered to me by a long line of sisters who enriched and fostered my abilities. I also lived in Arlington with Sister Marie Dolorosa, fun and kind, and always looking for a good time. How she pleaded that on our regular Sunday night, 1 hour of television watching during recreation, we might turn from Lassie Come Home and Little House on the Prairie and change the channel to Perry Mason. We young sisters never won that battle, but we loved watching and participating in the struggle. I thought my heart would break leaving Arlington and my little children and moving on to high school, how scary, at Loretto Academy in Kansas City. My first graduating class at Loretto Academy was the class of 1960. The last was the class of 1969. I came and stayed during the decade of change brought about by Vatican II, the Civil Rights Movement, and later the anti-Vietnam War movement. Loretto was dedicated to the task of teaching our girls to think, to care, to take stands, to have courage, to work for a better world. Faculty and students became involved in many inner city missions, in protests, politics, working to pass an open housing law, which was passed in Kansas City before the federal law was passed. We held open faculty debates on the justice or injustice of the Vietnam War, capital punishment. We followed the editorials of Walter Cronkite and Eric Severard, Saul Alinsky, and Martin and Malcolm X. Teachers and students tutored and played on inner city playgrounds, worked in breakfast programs, chaired panels of white and Black women to promote interracial justice, took to the streets, sometimes with the students, in demonstrations to bring about change. Although Loretto girls were as interested in boys and their clothes and having fun, they were also interested in the world they now saw and in making changes that would bring about a more just society. I still see these fine young women, and some are now a bit older, and they are still working and caring to make this home a little better place for all. In 1969, I was dispensed from my vows and became a co-member of Loretto in 1975. In the meantime, I taught a very rewarding year at St. Mary's College in Leavenworth, Kansas, which included a month interterm course where 9 students lived with me in the inner city at a center where I had lived for 5 years as a Loretto sister. They had a food budget made up of commodities before the food stamp program, studied city institutions, attended neighborhood meetings for change, and worked with inner city children and adults. Then in the fall of 1970, the Urban Renewal Program, having torn down our center and indeed the whole neighborhood, I moved on to get my Juris Doctor degree in law from Howard University in Washington, D.C. I returned to Kansas City after adopting my oldest daughter, Katie, in Washington. When I moved to Kansas City, Katie was practically readopted by sisters Susan Swain, who we called Susie, Elizabeth Ann Compton, Bethy, Sister Marlene Spiro, Morbles, and Rita Brugenhagen. Ann Vogelweid, co-member and former Sister Thomas Moore, became the girls' second mother and beloved family member. My youngest daughter, Annie, arrived from India on July the 3rd, 1976, just in time to watch the bicentennial fireworks from the rooftop of Loretto in Kansas City with her new Loretto family. I had now passed both the DC and Missouri bar and was working at the Law Center for Senior Citizens at Legal Aid. Eventually, I became the managing attorney of the Law Center and worked with Legal Aid for 13 years. All my legal work was with the frail and elderly seniors, in most cases, the more elderly of the elders, although often younger in age, but made frailer by life's trials. I also worked for 5 years as a staff attorney funded under the Older Americans Act, in which legal services was a priority. I circuit rode 13 counties, east, north, and south of Kansas City. I was a staff attorney for 10 years at Bishop Sullivan Social Service Agency. In all my working years, I still loved teaching and was a part-time instructor at Penn Valley Community College for about 30 years, teaching sociology, American government, and political science. From 1997 to 2002, I changed careers and became a full-time child care worker for my two oldest granddaughters, born 10 months apart to each of my two daughters. I faithfully attended a daycare program in childcare offered at Penn Valley Community College. The Loretto community had a wonderful shower for my preschool, giving me such creative gifts as a macaroni tub and bags full of macaroni with spoons and measuring cups for measuring. No, no, Jordan and Sammy, measure in the tub. Don't throw on the floor. I did lots of sweeping. We also received big outdoor tubs for swimming pools and sandboxes, washable body paints for hot summer days, where their body parts and underpants and diapers were painted in glorious colors. Beautiful homemade scrapbooks full of flowers and animals and nature and babies of every shade and color, fish and seashells and constellations. The children during these 5 years also became very fine young helpers, bagging groceries at Bishop Sullivan and delivering the same to senior citizens, attending our senior club, Growing Old with God, and escorting the seniors to activities, and best of all, to all-you-can-eat buffets. I then began another 13 years as staff attorney at Redemptorist Social Services, where I formally retired from work on a Friday evening in October of 2014, working until about 10 o'clock that evening, mostly shredding papers. I left for my final home the next Monday morning, bag and baggage, in a van and a car with Kathy Smith and Buster Heitman, arriving at my beautiful valley house in Nerinx, Kentucky the next evening. So here I am, in perfect peace, at the hallowed grounds of Loretto, surrounded by beautiful, caring, good friends, great conversation, enriching programs, delicious food service, books to read and cherish, so many that they will never run out, cardinals and hummingbirds, lilac trees and sunflowers, cattle and baby calves, my two cats, who are getting as old and lazy as I am, and content to just lie around, enjoy good conversation, and take lots of naps. God has been so good to me. Loretto has been so good to me. I have been blessed by work I have loved, friends and family I have loved, and living the last breath of my life in a little bit of heaven we call our earthly home. May God and all God's creatures learn to live simply, love tenderly, survive, and be at peace.
This is also a writing by Maureen. I spent the summers of my childhood years and my teens at Sagandaga Park, my favorite spot on earth. And I returned all my life, summer after summer, to be with family at this sacred spot. I had a grandmother and an Aunt Margaret, always called Grandma and Aunt Margaret by the grandkids, but the elders called them Maggie and Annie. I love the song, When You and I Were Young, Maggie. I choose this song in honor of all my loved ones who have gone before and who walked the sacred grounds of Sagandaga, and in gratitude that I may now walk with them.
The creaking old mill is still here, Maggie, since you and I were young. Oh, they say that I'm feeble with age, Maggie. My steps are slower than then. My face is a well-written page, Maggie, and time all along was the pen. Oh, they say we have outlived our time, Maggie, as dated as the songs we've sung. But to me you're as you were, Maggie, when you and I were young.
These are some quotations from Martin Luther King Jr. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. The time is always right to do what is right. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. And the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy.
Let us pray. This is an Aztec prayer to God. Oh, only for a short while have you loaned us to each other, because we take form in your act of drawing us, and we breathe in your singing us, but only for a short while have you loaned us to each other, because even a drawing out in crystalline obsidian fades, and the green feathers, the crown feathers of the Quetzal bird lose their color. and even the sounds of the waterfall die out in the dry season. So we too, because only for a short while have you loaned us to each other. Amen. We will now move to an opportunity to share our experience and our friendship and our love for Maureen. It'll take us a few minutes to get set up. Then we will begin with the Mother House community and then ask the family to join in and then open it up to the wider Loretto community. We ask that you state your name for the people in Zoom land before you speak.
This is Eleanor again. I want to speak a few words on behalf of Martha Fly. When Martha's own sickness began to get worse and she needed assistance at daily tasks, I couldn't always do them because I was working. And Maureen, learning that Martha needed help, began to recruit friends and others in the Kansas City area, even total strangers, who would come and assist Martha in the evenings and in the mornings. Gradually, we found a book called, well, I guess I'm not going to remember the name of the book. And Maureen used this structured program that we learned about to organize people in teams to come at a scheduled time and to do scheduled specific tasks. It lasted for about 8 years, and Maureen set up similar kinds of share the care programs for 3 other people in Kansas City who she was close to.
My name is Sister Alicia, and I first met Maureen when I was a freshman at the Heights, and Maureen was a senior. And Maureen's younger sister, Sandy, and I were good friends. And so we used to think it was really neat to kind of hang around with seniors. And Maureen was always very accommodating. And even though we used to play tricks on her, she was really easy to play tricks on, and she just had such a great time when we did that. And then I came in touch with Maureen again when her oldest daughter, I think it was Katie, moved to Thornton, or anyway, it was North Denver. And Susan Swain and I used to go often to visit when Maureen came. And coming here to the Mother House, several times, Maureen and a group and I went to the SOA, and most of the time I got to room with Maureen, which was always a stitch, as someone always says. So anyway, what a great woman, and just social justice minded, and lived so simply. About a month ago, maybe a little bit more, she called me and told me she left a box over at the lobby for me to go through and see what I wanted, and to put the rest out in the giveaway table. Well, I don't really need too much right now at my stage either, but I had to take 2 of her t-shirts. One was of African women walking, I think it was marching, and it said, "We march because they march." And the other t-shirt was one from the Adirondacks, and I know that her family often vacationed there. So it was a pleasure to know her.
Elizabeth Kroom. Maureen and I kind of shared a life. We were in the novitiate together. She was a second year novice when I was a postulate. And then my first mission was in Kansas City with her. I have lots of stories, and if I started to tell them, you'd get all confused about what is she talking about. But one of the things I remember most is Maureen was always the friend, the person who was there. And if you needed something, a pat on the back, to tell somebody you were doing a good job and what a wonderful person you were, Maureen always did it. You didn't tell her to. She was just there and she did it. She was a wonderful, wonderful friend and will be missed by many, many people.
I'm Mary Swain. I've been thinking about Susan, my Susan, because she was so close to Katie and Annie. She was in Kansas City when Maureen was there, when, you know, it said she moved there when Katie was young, and then when she adopted Annie. And I used to hear about Katie and Annie a lot. So Susan was certainly a part of their lives.
This is Susan Clausen. In her autobiography, Maureen mentioned the Valley House and her enjoyment of all the life surrounding her there, including cattle and the calves. And so I wanted you to know that Cody and Angela contacted me today and said that they are going to have the cattle fenced in that pasture that we passed through on the way to the cemetery as their way of honoring Maureen.
Sister Marie Lord. I was in the class with Sandy in the novitiate, Maureen's sister, and knew Maureen before I met her because of Sandy. And then through the years, while I was working in the infirmary and the children were young, Katie and Annie and Maureen came here one summer. Maureen was volunteering to do other jobs, and I asked if the girls would like to work in the infirmary. They were candy stripe age, just tots, well, a little bigger than tots. We put on red and white aprons and let them carry the empty trays or see if anyone wanted water and things like that. And then I watched them grow through the years. The thing that touched me, well, all of everything she did touched me. She was truly a wonderful person, as you've heard. But I had been calling different ones in the infirmary, trying to get around, and during this pandemic. And I just happened to call her on Derby Day. And she said to me, you know, this is such a fun day. She said, my family and I always bet against each other, and we take bets and play, and I just love it. I just love it. She talked and talked about the family, and then 7 o'clock, the call came. Maureen had died. Prior to that, in the conversation, I should have said this first, sorry. She's talking about the family, and she said, even those who've gone before. I said, well, you know, the one who I know of your family the best was Sandy. And I said, if you see her or talk to her, if you talk to her, I said, please remember me to her. And she said, I will. Well, then 7 o'clock, that call came, and I all but freaked out. But she was a wonderful person to know. God bless her and thank her.
We're ready to move on to members of Maureen's family. Please feel free to speak up. We'd love to hear your family stories.
Hey, Sue, are you talking about people on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. If anyone on Zoom wishes to share, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself and then begin speaking. If you try to speak when someone else is doing so at the same time, please try again when that person has finished.
This is Agnes Ann Shum.
Wait, did you raise your hand?
No,
Go
she
ahead,
said she's
Agnes.
on mute.
Hello.
Hello.
Go, Agnes Ann, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I had a conversation several years ago with Maureen. I had gone into the dining room at the Mother House for a cup of coffee in the morning, and she was preparing for her annual visit to New York. But there on the table were lots of papers all spread out and her checkbook. I said, what are you doing, Maureen? And she told me she was preparing the memorial and commemorative service for her two sisters who had died. She was also looking at her checkbook, and she said, you know, when I die, I want my family to come and have a party. And so I'm leaving money for the party, but I also need to reserve the conference room so they can have a party in there. And I said, Maureen, what date do you plan to reserve the conference room? And she looked at me with a puzzled look for, felt like eons. And then she says, oh, I guess I have to die first. So we both laughed at that. And then she so frequently told us at our gatherings, because I entered with her at the same time in 1953. And we sort of watched Annie and Katie grow up through Maureen's stories at every gathering that we had. So I just want to say to Katie and Annie especially, be sure you come back to visit. But with your family there, have the party that Maureen wanted you to have and enjoy. Thanks.
Kathleen, Lydia, do one of you want to share?
Yes. I would like to talk about Maureen in Kansas City. The wonderful things that she wrote in her obituary about all the things that the students and the faculty did in Kansas City were all because of her. I was the principal, a new principal in Kansas City, and I was not allowed to listen to the radio or read a newspaper. She was, because she taught social studies and history. And she came to me one day and she said, Kathleen, I feel in conscience that I need to go to Selma, Alabama. And I said to her, what is Selma, Alabama? So she had to educate me too. And she had been going to meet with civil rights people in Kansas City, a lot of young priests and older priests too, and a lot of ministers from various religions. And that's who she went to Selma, Alabama with, including Judy Baiman and also Treese Wawi. But she came back and she absolutely transformed our school and our faculty. We then had all those meetings. We then had all those workshops. We then had all those discussions because of her, because she led them and brought the speakers in. When we moved out to the new school out on Warnell Road, we were able every Tuesday afternoon to close the school, and all the school students and faculty of the high school went out for community service. That's the kind of person that Maureen was. And everybody loved her, and she was a marvelous teacher. So we love you, Maureen, and we miss you a lot.
Good.
Lydia Pena. I knew Maureen at Loretto Heights College. And then I met Sandy at Loretto Heights a couple years later. I think it was the summer after my junior year that I drove to Schenectady with Sandy. And I met the entire family, Smith family, and it was a large family. They were fun and very generous. Then Elizabeth Kroon talked about knowing her in the novitiate. Well, Elizabeth and I entered the same year. So I lost track of Maureen during a large part of my life, but then we reconnected when she came to the Mother House. And every time I came here or there, I visited with her, and we always had so many good memories. A memory of Vivian, a young French woman who died. And of course, she always talked about her daughters, Katie and Annie. So I was enriched by Maureen in many ways, and I want to thank you, Maureen, and thank all of Loretto for establishing co-membership so that Maureen could come back and live with us.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead. We can hear you.
Hi, this is Happy Sullivan. Is it our turn?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm here with my daughter, Samantha, and I'm Maureen's nephew. And I just first want to say thank you so much for allowing us into your lovely service. We are up at Great Sacandaga Lake right now. And I was just explaining to my little daughter, who's 4, that that Maureen's now an angel. So she has a bunch of questions about that, but we'll get through that later. One funny story about, first of all, she loved all of you and loved her life, and she loved the Loretto House. So thank you so much for allowing her to go there for her final years. It was one of the best things ever. She was busy, she had things to do, she was with friends, and she could be helpful. And that's just what she wanted, just instead of just sitting around a house all by herself. So thank you very much, and keep up the good work. So we finally thought of a way to get Maureen connected to the family. She was visiting last summer, and we came up with this idea to get her this GrandPad thing, and a mobile device for senior citizens. So we got it all set up, and she was very excited and started using it. And you can do a video like we're doing now and talk to everybody. post pictures. So every time I was trying to teach Maureen how to do this, and every time we could never see her face. And towards the middle, she started to show her feet. I'd say, Maureen, we can't see your face. We can't see your face. Please let us see your face. And she goes, well, I don't know what's wrong with this. I don't know why you can't see my face. Well, finally, a few months ago, Maureen admittedly admitted that the reason why we couldn't see her face is because she didn't want us to see her face because she thought it had too many wrinkles. And I said, oh, Maureen, please, you Smith girls, they're all the same. She and her sisters, you couldn't, if they didn't look, number one, top of the charts, they didn't want anybody to see them. I always thought that was so funny, and Maureen was no different than any of her sisters and her brother. So it was great to have her connected to the family that way. And we do, of course, are going to love and miss her, and Katie and Annie and all the family for sure. But it's part of the circle of life that we all know. And now she's a great, wonderful spirit and an angel for all of us. And we have an invisible string that we can connect with her at any time. So I want to thank you all and wish you all well. Love you all too. Bye-bye.
Would anyone else on Zoom like to share?
Yeah, this is Julie Kerber. And one of the wonderful things about the Mother House is that a lot of people move there at, towards the end of their life. And it was wonderful to meet Maureen. And I think the first time I met her, she had blue hair because she was a Kansas City fan, of course. And I struck up a conversation with her because that was so much fun that she was so excited about her team. And so we got to get to know each other a little bit. And then she invited me. She said, well, come on down to the house. And she lived in a little house down in the field, kind of on the other side of the cemetery. And it was so much fun to be in that little home because I had always been curious about it because I knew Elaine had lived there and Peg and I think Mary Gunsweiler. So it was so much fun to be in her house. And she talked about the cows and how she loved that the cows were kind of romping around in the little calves. And she just loved living there. And of course she had her cats, and I'm a cat lover, so we shared that. But most of all, she was so proud of her family and her kids. And it was so sweet. She showed me the pictures and talked about them. And I just always appreciated saying hello to her when I would see her and her smile. And she was just always so, so welcoming and happy to see me. And I think she probably made everybody feel special, who she spoke to and had contact with. And I'm especially thinking of Neil Tucker because I know that he was a very good friend of Maureen's, and my heart goes out to him and to all of us that we now miss her, but she's the angel that we just heard about. So thank you.
And I'm Neil Tucker, and a new CoL member, and I'm in Kansas City, so some of the comments, Kathleen Teague, and the different things are very interesting because I'm not too far from Loretto Academy on 39th, and I walk my dog down there, and I remember stories she told me. But the Maureen was in my religious tradition and participating in music. We had a song that talked about God as being whatever you needed, doctor, lawyer, and make a long story short, Maureen was my lawyer. I mean, she wasn't my lawyer. I didn't know it at the time, but during my CoL membership process, we had Eye on the Way study sessions, and it just so happened it was a very challenging time in my life. I had the same job for about 30 years, and I was under a lot of pressure and stress. And so this was a very helpful time for me to be, in a small group. And fortunately, I probably focused more on myself, but looking back on it, she was just what I needed. She even looked at the papers, those papers that they have you sign sometimes when they don't want you to sue them. But she looked over that. But looking back on it, yeah, she was exactly what I needed. Now, I was able to visit her at the mother house before COVID-19 appeared. And so I don't have a lot of sorrow about her passing, because one of the reasons I was there was to work on a video with Eleanor Craig, but also because her health had deteriorated. And myself, I find it hard to, focusing on end of life issues and death. And so it was hard for me to talk about her situation, but she had no problem. She was very, very helpful to me. We had good conversations about this, and she was ready. She was prepared to die. She was ready for what was going to come next. It was a great conversation. She was perfectly comfortable talking about it. I wasn't. And the thing that I remember is that she was, number one, she was grateful for being there at the Loretto Mother House and being part of the Loretto community. And she was content with where she was. She wasn't in a hurry to die. She was happy being in where she was. So she was content, happy. And it was interesting that the term, I think it was her own words, perfect peace, because that's the way I found her. And so it was a lesson for me. And it's also a testimony to the Loretto community. So she taught me that lessons, those kind of lessons. And that's about it for me here in Kansas City.
Hello. So this is Bobby Sullivan, and I'm up here on Sacandaga as well, and I'm out looking at the sunset on the lake. And I have 3 short, funny stories for you. So the first one is Maureen was my godmother. No, that's not funny. That's the truth. And when I was a little boy, I asked Maureen, and I said, well, if you're my godmother and you're a girl, I thought God was a guy. So how can you be my godmother? She kind of looked at me with that kind of little schmirkish little twinkle that she had, and she thought a minute and rolled her eyes. And she said, oh, don't worry, Bobby. Give it some time. There's a good chance they're going to figure that out. My second story is we were on our boat on Sacandaga, and it was her brother Jimmy's boat. And I was little again, and she was in her full nun regalia, all the way from the habit down to the socks. And she was sitting on the side of the boat, and we're riding on the great Sacandaga Lake. She had this big smile on her face, and her beads were wiggling back and forth as the waves were going. And all of a sudden, we hit a boat wave, and she fell backwards, and her whole habit came all the way up and covered over her head. And I remember staring, and I see these legs, because I didn't think nuns had legs, and she had underwear on, and I didn't think nuns wore underwear. I didn't know what the heck was under there. And all of a sudden, my mother jumped up and screamed, and she grabbed the habit, pulled it back down, and she ripped off Maureen's head thing. There's a word for that, I'm sure. And all of a sudden, there was this hair. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing this beautiful black short hair, a little lighter than black. And I'm thinking as a little boy, oh my gosh, what a day here. The nuns actually have legs, they wear underwear, and they have hair. There's all this new stuff I learned in one day on the great Sacandaga Lake. And then finally, I had a great conversation with Maureen the Sunday before the Kentucky Derby. And we were talking, and besides her telling me, Bobby, you have to say your consonants clear, and you have to say your vowels clear. And I said, okay, yeah, I get that. And so I said, well, Maureen, the Kentucky Derby's coming up. And, you know, you've been pretty tight with the man up there. And I'm wondering perhaps maybe if you might have a little in with the guy. maybe we can get a little bit of heads up and we can make some money in the Kentucky Derby. And she just laughed at me. She said, oh, Bobby, I'll see what maybe we could do. So kind of ironic that right before the Derby, she decided, I guess, that the rest of us Sullivans must have needed to make a little bit of money. So she decided to go up and take care of it. So it has been an honor and a pleasure to see you all and remember some faces. And I know Maureen loved you all dearly, as my brother Kevin said. And Eleanor, kind of nice to see you after all these years. You haven't aged at all. You must be splashing that holy water all over you or washing in it or something, huh? So thank you all very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So this is Katie, Maureen's daughter. Don't know that I can speak on behalf of everybody, but I can say, so we are all here in Sacandaga to celebrate Mom and her life. She left in a very peaceful place. She has no regret. She had no regrets. There was nothing left unsaid. There was nothing left undone. I know how dearly she loved every one of you, and she appreciated I think she appreciated every person she came in contact with. They made an impact on her, and I know she had a tremendous impact on every person that she met. And I feel honored to have had her as my mom and my closest friend, the grandmother to my children, and the great-grandmother to my baby granddaughter. And I love her and will miss her, but I'm also extremely grateful for every memory, every moment that I've had with her. So thank you all so much for being here and for sharing your memories and your stories. Anyone who has my email, I would love for you to share more if you have them, because if anything that our family does is tell stories, and likes to repeat all of them. So even if you think I've heard them, I would love to hear your perspective, because I'm sure they are different than my mom's. So thank you, everybody, for being here and for sharing your love with us.
Would anyone else on Zoom like to share?
This is Kitty in Nicaragua.
Hi, Kitty.
Can
Go
you
ahead.
hear me? Okay. First of all, my love to all Maureen's family, and thank you for sharing those great memories there at the lake. I live in Nicaragua, and so I met Maureen. Maybe it was the first year she had come back to the mother house, and we were in the computer room because I lived out in the woods at Cedars of Peace, and I was catching up a little on email, and she was busily, it was like shortly before Derby. So she was busily looking at all the horses and trying to figure out which one she should be betting on. And she also told me that she particularly loved grays. I don't know if that was a family thing or just her thing, but I've always connected her with Derby, although every time I would come back to and I would be at the mother house and at Derby time, but every time I sat down with her, I felt such a deep peace. And I think it's true what people said, that everyone who was with her was kind of the most important person in the world. And I just will always appreciate that. And I think it, you know, that she could figure out dying during the Derby when it wasn't even the right time for the Derby. So I thought that was kind of a miraculous thing too. So I've been talking to her a lot here in Nicaragua, and I thank all of you for sharing her with me. That's it.
This is Carol Eschen in Kansas City. And first of all, I'd like to say hi to Katie's family. I've known Katie and Annie since they were toddlers, well, infants really, when Annie came. And I've known Maureen through many iterations through in Kansas City. What Kitty said is true, that she was one of those people that made everyone feel exactly so important. I think that was a gift she did for everyone, and she, her whole face would light up. I got a chance to see her last summer before COVID out on the courtyard at the Mother House, and we talked for 2 hours, and she told great stories and even put her false teeth in for me. And then I saw her again in December when I went to Dory Kincaid's 90th birthday. I spent quite a bit of time with Maureen and consider it a real gift and a blessing. But I've known her here in Kansas City. I've known her as a great teacher. I taught Katie and Annie, and would like to tell a story of the time she came to Kansas City Academy. And we had some students at that time that for whom sitting in a theater during a presentation was a major challenge, and it was really difficult for them to pay attention. But Maureen came and told us her story and all of the stories about confronting the policeman in Selma and what it was like and where they slept. And she had the entire audience totally in her hand. And her gift of storytelling is, I think, throughout the whole family. But her brother Jim was a good storyteller too. And I am grateful to have known her and to have, you know, been a recipient of that wonderful smile. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tamara in Kansas City. And oh, Maureen, she's everything, isn't she? She's love, she's justice, she's fun. She's connecting people all over the place. Well, of course she would, but she introduced Katie and I and Annie, and Katie and I had great talks about adoption. You know, Maureen could just do everything. We go on walks for justice together, and then you'd be driving to the Mother House with Martha and Maureen and myself, dodging turtles along the way. And Maureen was just a hoot. You know, she just had the best laughter, just the most joyous times. And then she could be very serious. In our group 16s, she would shoot from the hip. I mean, you know, she said what she wanted to say, and it was straightforward and right to the point and didn't hold back. Really, she was just everything, you know, kind, bright, articulate, loving, intuitive. She could feel your sorrow, you know, and put her hand on your knee when she knew that that's what you needed. Or she could, you know, say, pull it together and keep on walking. So she was truly a gift for all of us. And she was truly a gift, well, for everyone. But I agree with Kathleen Ty, who was also my principal. And she gave quite a bit to Loretto in Kansas City when we were on 39th and thereafter. You know, that shaped a lot of who I am today. All those discussions, and then all the Tuesday going out and doing our apostolic work. But, you know, to think of all the people that she has shaped and will go on from us to future kids to future kids. It's really unbelievable. Okay, I've talked too much. I'm sorry. Katie, Annie, love you. All you two, everybody there. Oh. I'm sorry, I'm back. Is there any way we could all get what Eleanor read emailed to us? Is that possible?
Would anyone else like to speak?
Oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, and I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in, oh, when the songs begin to bang, oh, when the drums begin to bang, oh, Lord, I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in. Oh, Sister Maureen, you are my friend. Oh, Sister Maureen, you are my friend. Hey, I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in. When the saints go marching in. When the saints go marching in. Oh, Lord, I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in.